our AVer Plus software. This is part of an ongoing series that we have of AVer Plus tutorials and webinars. If you haven't caught our first webinar, it's actually an overview of the AVer Plus software. I would encourage you to visit our website at averusa.com, which has more of an overview of the tools and toolbars. We're going to actually specialize on one or two particular tools today so we can look at tips and tricks specialized to those particular tools. One of the things I wanted to impress upon you today is that we cannot hear you. You can hear me, hopefully, but I cannot hear you. But that doesn't mean that you can't ask questions. In fact, I urge you to ask questions. Throughout, you can ask questions, and especially at the end, please feel free to stay after and ask as many questions as you can or as you feel like, and we'll do our best to answer those as we go forward and afterward as well. With that said, my name is Brian, and I'm a product trainer for the company, and I've got Michael on the line as well. He's a product manager, and we'll do our best to make sure that we get all those questions answered. We're going to spend our time, like I said, exploring some little useful tools and tricks and tips that I think are going to get you the most out of the software that we possibly can. So with that said, I want to take you on to our first tool that we're going to explore, which is called the Move tool. After we look at the Move tool, we're going to look at the Property panel. We're going to look at the locking, cloning, and copying objects feature of the Move tool itself. And then we're going to look at the virtual transparency mode of AVer Plus, which is really powerful and has so many features that I think it's going to really help transform the way that we teach in the classroom with just a free piece of software. So I think it's going to be really valuable, and I'm going to spend some time on that with you today. So first, we're going to look at the Move tool, and this is part of the basic toolbar at the bottom of the AVer Plus toolbar. And once again, if you're not familiar with the toolbar, I do urge you after we're done today to go back to our pre-recorded webinar that's an overview. Once again, that's at averusa.com. But we're going to spend time looking at this particular tool, the Move tool. It looks like two little arrows that form a crosshair. And when we go to the Move tool, we're going to get all sorts of functionality out of it. And when I click over to the next slide, I'm going to show you a slide that's already been created. And what the Move tool does, first of all, is allow you to move. Obviously, that's why it's called that. But the Move tool does a lot more than that. It allows us to manipulate things. So here I have a slide that might be a lesson where we teach students the difference between adjectives and nouns. And so by clicking on the Move tool, I get the little crosshair icon, and when I come to a word and I click on it, I can obviously move it. That's my first objective. But I can do a lot more with it. You'll see that everything has a square on the outside. I have little corners now. Objects have corners. I can click on those corners. I can resize anything I want, which is nice. I have a circle at the top. That means that I can rotate any object that I've selected. So I have that ability as well. I can right-click on any object. On the Mac, it's going to be a little different. Instead of right-clicking, you're going to have an icon up at the top right of the object that looks like a clipboard. It's essentially a right-click. And when you do that, you'll have a menu that brings up all the things that you're probably used to in most programs, things like copy and paste. Some special options that we'll talk about in a little bit, like infinite clone and transparency. We'll get to those. But I want you to be aware that you have the ability to manipulate things. So, for example, for this word shiny, if I double-click on that, I can actually change the type. So I can just change the word to bright, for example. And that's how I would edit the type. Now, you'll notice that my toolbars just went away. And that's because I did something that teachers do on accident all the time. And they get confused a lot of times asking, how did that happen? Where did my toolbars go? In the Move tool, if I double-click on the screen, accidentally or on purpose, the toolbars disappear. And that's actually a feature that's built in on purpose to give you a clean board to work with. It's just double-clicking while you're in the Move tool that gives you just more of a surface area that you can use. To bring those toolbars back, I just double-click again, and they pop right back up. So that's just something that if you aren't aware of, you might find yourself lost. But now that you know what it does, you can actually use that to your advantage. If you need the real estate, just double-click, it disappears. Double-click, it comes right back up. Okay? So, again, the objective of this lesson is that we want students to be able to separate words from, adjectives going into one circle, nouns going into another. So it's a really simple lesson, except I have two circles and a student might accidentally move one of the circles, and we don't want that. In fact, I'm going to go up to undo so that we get it in the exact right spot. Now you'll notice that the circle on the left doesn't move. I can't move it. That's because that circle has been, if I can click on it exactly, that circle has been locked. And rather than try to fight that, if I just click on this, you'll see one of my options with this circle is to lock it. So I would go to lock all, and that gives me a padlock symbol with the letter K. That's the international symbol for locking. And that's a really helpful thing because there are going to be certain things when I'm creating lessons in the software that I want to lock down. I don't want the students to accidentally move it. I don't want to move it, for example, if I'm at a whiteboard or anything like that. I don't want those things to actually be moved. So we have the ability to lock them down. And when they're locked down, they can't be moved unless I physically go in there and unlock them. So a student can't, I'm trying to move it right now, they can't accidentally move that. They can only move, or I can only move, the things that need to be moved. So you have that ability as well. You have the ability to control things using the Move tool, not just moving, but modifying by locking and things of that nature, copy, paste, and so forth. So the Move tool is going to end up being, I think, quite useful to you as well. Okay. And again, if you have questions, please, by all means, enter them into the chat box down at the bottom right, and we will get those answered for you. Okay. So going on to the next slide, got another function of the Move tool that I want to show you, which is called Infinite Clone. Okay. So we have here 4 coins that we've gotten pictures of and brought them into the program. And with these, basically we have, if I right-click, I get that same menu, right? I'm still in the Move tool. And I want to show you a feature called Infinite Clone. Now this is really cool, and it's useful especially in elementary grades, we found. But with Infinite Clone, I can basically turn that on, and what I'm telling the software to do as I do this is to basically preserve the original, but let me make as many copies as I want. And so the benefit of this is going to become really apparent with things like counting. And in this example, teaching students how to count money. So now that I've locked the originals and turned on infinite cloning, what I can do is ask a student something like, show me how to make 30 cents. So that student can grab the quarter and it will make a copy and leave the original untouched. They can then grab a nickel and now we have 30 cents. And again, the original is untouched. So I could ask student B, okay, show me a different way of making 30 cents. So they could grab a dime, grab another dime, grab a third dime, and again, leaves that almost as a bank where we can kind of withdraw from that as much as we want and still have the originals there. So it's just kind of a really cool tool that we have. It's available under that same right-click menu, but it allows us kind of the flexibility to do lots of things with manipulatives that we would do in an elementary setting. And I can turn that off at any time. When I click on it, I get this little star icon near the top of the image that tells me that Infinite Clone is on. When I right-click on it, my choice is Infinite Clone